as I have said tonight on The Insight, we're touching on the intersection between entrepreneurship and, of course, sustainability. Climate change has been such a huge topic. A lot of people are talking about it. So how can we make money? Well, we're thinking about the climate. In studio tonight with me, I have Yvette Ondachi, who is the Director of East Africa for the Sales and Strategic Partnerships at SINAPIS. And also with me, I have Wangiwe Joanna, who is the MD of Emerge Livelihoods, who's coming out to us straight from Malawi. She's already here with us. I'll start with you, Yvette. This is such an interesting topic, and people usually think when it comes to money, you cannot be thinking about the climate. You only need to think about one. What do you think of this?
It's very interesting. I think that money, especially in relationship to climate change, is an incentive. You know, because whenever there is behavioral change, there has to be some kind of incentive, all right? But when we look at entrepreneurs are a very unique set of people. They're entrepreneurs and they're people who do business. They're different people. Entrepreneurs solve problems. They solve a problem in society. They solve a problem in community. Right. And there is something like you can be a business person and you're just enriching yourself. That is not necessarily helpful and sustainable in the long run. Right. And there's a lot that I can say about that. For example, if you just enrich yourself and you're the only person who's getting rich at the expense of the community, what will happen? You'll become a target. You'll become a target of crime. Yeah? But then if you have a business that enriches your community, then people are happy. They are glad that you are there and they are blessing you and they're very, very, very grateful for that. So entrepreneurs are a group of people who solve problems. Right. And therefore, there's a group of people who solve problems in relation to climate change that really we'll talk a little bit more about in terms of sustainability.
All right. Thank you so much, Yvette, for that open. And of course, we have Joanne all the way from Malawi. Joanne, if you could just tell us, you know, we see these things in Kenya. We see how we're trying to get entrepreneurs to come into this space, think about climate change. How exactly is it in Malawi?
So basically, Malawi most of us emerging that have to make the impact well.
There seems to be quite a lag with Joanna. All right, so let me just bring this back to you, Yvette. You've told me that you cannot, you know, these two things are not interchangeable, they're not very different. You have to think about people's livelihoods, you have to think about the climate, and you have to think about entrepreneurship. The youth seem to be taking a very different approach to things nowadays. This, you know, conscious Gen Zs are very open to it.
Absolutely.
How exactly is this movement going forward?
Here's the thing, we only have one planet. So if we spoil it, what's going to happen in future? And therefore, it is everybody's responsibility, not just entrepreneurs. Whether you're a student, whichever position you take in society, you need to know that we only have one planet. And therefore, there's a strong need for having a drive that will drive awareness and lead to behavioral change. Right. Just going back to the article that was earlier on the eco, it was really nice watching how motocross people were planting trees, which is so beautiful, you know? And I think that we can do more. I'm so happy that this is one community that's doing it. Right. But we need to be proactive as opposed to being reactive. Right. So many times we realize, oh, there's drought. Okay, let's plant trees. What about if for every tree that was cut, and we've been hearing this for a very long time, from the days of Wangari Maathai, she says, every tree that is cut down, plant 4. Why can't this become a normal behavior? Why can't we celebrate green spaces? Because the reality is, if you look ahead and project in the next 10 to 20 years, if we grab all our green spaces and become a concrete jungle, where's recreation going to be? Right. And that's the mindset that most entrepreneurs have, and more so, I'll call them social entrepreneurs, because they are measuring their impact on, am I leaving the world better than how I found it? All right. And that's just custodianship. And so if everybody can take a role of being a custodian, then they can be able to make a change and leave the world a better place.
All right, Yvette, let's, rope in in Joanna into this conversation. When it comes to innovation, Joanna, most of the time people usually say it can go one of two ways. It's either green innovation or it's quite the opposite. We're looking at quite literally mass destruction of the climate. How exactly can we create a balance when it comes to innovation? Because we do need to progress, but we need to progress consciously.
So, innovation has and it doesn't that we have to set all the time. Basically, we actually leverage new trends or think about what other traditional ways can basically improve renewable technology.
All right. I think we're losing Joanna a little bit. There seems to be Malawi and Kenya are not doing very well internet-wise tonight. So I'll just try to throw this back to you, Yvette.
Yep.
How exactly are we taking a more conscious approach when it comes to innovation?
Yeah.
We do not want to just see, innovation has come with so much destruction. How can we have a balance?
Well, first and foremost, we need better innovation between Malawi and Kenya, as you have brilliantly said. That is a great, so a typical entrepreneur would say, how can we solve this problem and what solution can we have? I want to use the example, I thought of certain companies that have done a great job, and one of them is Bolt, actually. Because they are driving around and all the emissions that they're causing, they have made a commitment to plant a certain number of trees, and they have campaigns among their riders all over the world. They give them a box and say, hey, why don't you do this? When you go home or go to an open space, just throw these seeds.
Right.
You see, so as there are emissions on one side, you're thinking about planting trees on the other side. So that, in a sense, is a balance. But here's the thing. Entrepreneurship exists in a community. No man is an island. You see, and this whole individualistic mindset is, in my view, what would be more destructive. You do need a community where you can balance one another and where you can say, okay, this has this harmful effect. How can we counter it on the other side? That's why there are governance boards. That's why there's corporate social responsibility. And it's not just for the big corporates that are growing. You can have an SME with some social responsibility.
Right.
And that's what is being pushed, so that we can hold as many people accountable to change and have an impact on the environment at this particular point. There's environmental impact, there is social impact, and then there is financial impact. So all of these can interplay together, and then we also help. So like at Synapis, we help you think about your business model. So as you're solving your problem as an entrepreneur, what is your business, how is your business model going to solve the issue of unemployment, for example? You may not just be one person, but the more people we impact to solve unemployment, great. How is your business solution going to bring, is it environmentally positive or environmentally negative? Those are the questions that we help entrepreneurs think through so that you have a strong model, and that is what leads to sustainability.
All right, Yvette, let's try to get Joanna one more time. Joanna, maybe if you could just chime in here, tell us how exactly can we incorporate small and medium enterprises? A lot of African countries have too many MSMEs. Here in Kenya, it's almost 80% of all businesses. Usually these businesses don't care about the environment, they're just trying to make a penny. How can we make SMEs more sustainable?
All right. Are you able to hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, so basically one of the important aspects of supporting MSMEs to become more sustainable is to educate them first. So make sure that they're adapting the best practices in climate adaptation as well as resilience, and getting them to also understand what environmental sustainability is all about. Because in most cases, most of them might be practicing, but they're not fully aware that it's one of the most important aspects they need to incorporate at the moment, and make sure that their products and services are not contributing to the harm that we might actually see across the ecosystem. And another important aspect is to make sure that we're investing in them financially. So that's basically what we call climate financing. if we really want to actually have improved sustainability around the business practices, we basically have to invest in the businesses to make sure they have adequate financing that is helping them get access to new technologies or emerging trends in how they can actually improve the way that they do their business practices. And on the same, what's also important is to see that we have a culture that goes beyond the businesses themselves. So what are the customers interested in, so that when they're emerging businesses, they basically solve the key challenges in the communities that are in line with both environmental sustainability, but the needs of the customers, because now we see more people becoming conscious about what they really want to do around conservation, especially for the environment. So very key that starting from governments, they have to actually develop policies that are really going to align with businesses, adapting better practices, but also then getting the businesses to become more aware, to become more adaptive to better practices that are contributing to environmental sustainability, whilst we're also investing in them.
All right, thank you so much, Joanna, for that. And as we start to conclude, Yvette, she's talked about raising consciousness, not just for the business community, but for the government as well. And we know how policies are usually so important in changing perspectives. What do you think is the role of the government in this particular situation?
I think that government can play a role of partnership and recognition, because we have some of the best policies in the world. The problem is the implementation. So who is giving the oversight as to how to implement it and implement it well? When we think of a lot of when you talk of the MSMEs, my mind goes to a typical marketplace.
Right.
Why is it that we don't have 3 dustbins, one for plastics, one for the metals and the other for the recyclable material? Government can do that and say they can play a role in terms of driving awareness, but also enabling sustainability. Then there's a way that we call it, is it green bonds, or impact investing, that we work hand in hand. So when government receives money to drive this, how does that go to the small person on the ground? And how does that go ahead and equip? How do we leverage on government facilities that will enhance or even incubate innovations around this? So government has got a huge role to play in this, but we also have to work hand in hand. So we really just need to, we will accomplish more when we work together as opposed to working in isolation.
That was very insightful. Thank you so much, Yvette. And we've completely run out of time. So Joanna, I'll just loop you in right now. Maybe if you could just tell us, we always say, climate change, everyone should be pushing it, but there seems to be a bad guy in this room. Who is the bad guy, and how exactly do we stop the bad guy?
I kind of missed the question.
Let me repeat it, Joanna. Maybe if you could just tell us, we're always talking about climate change. We keep saying the things that should be done, but clearly something is not being done. Who is the bad guy in the room? How can we stop this bad guy?
All right, great. So I feel like it's not really blame or identifying who the bad guy is, because as Yvette mentioned, we really need to foster collaboration. So what's the government doing? What are the other stakeholders doing, like the local NGOs or the international NGOs, the impact investors? How do we basically bring this conversation on the table and make sure that there's strong collaboration across the ecosystem, and we're not really developing solutions in silos and investing in silos, because by the end of the day, that's what's actually bringing lesser results than if we actually all collaborated and basically figured out how do we basically push this agenda forward in a manner that's really making sense and tangible. So for instance, one of the interventions that we're actually affiliated in is the Empowering Sustainable Entrepreneurship in Africa, which is a strong collaboration between Village Capital and 5 ESOs across 5 emerging markets across Africa. And basically, we also have to work with the local stakeholders in each country to make sure that we're supporting entrepreneurs to make sure they have access to investment and also the capacity building. So solutions like that basically are bringing in an ecosystem-led approach, which is basically going to be able to scale and diversify and also benefit different countries. And that's just one example that I can share, that there's not really a bad guy. We could all be the bad guys, but can we all work together to make sure that we're actually curbing this problem?
All right. Thank you so much, Joanna. Thank you so much, Yvette, for joining us tonight. We were talking about sustainability, entrepreneurship, what is the intersection, and we've realized that maybe all we need is collaboration, because there's no big bad guy in the room. We could be the big bad guy. Thank you so much once again for joining us. Have yourselves a very lovely evening tonight on The Insight. We've had such a good conversation. We've told you all that is happening. Until next time, have yourselves a lovely night.